You right there guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're taking a look at MCG's The Gaol in Rutland. Now if you've not seen one of these site reviews before, the way we always structure these is I put some annotations here and here, so if there's a specific thing you want to find out about the site, like what the prices are, what game modes they have on offer, or maybe you just want to jump straight ahead to the conclusion if you so desire, you can click on any of those and it's going to take you straight to that part in the video. And without further delay, we're going to dive straight into the review. So the site's located at the Oakham Enterprise Park in Rutland, which is just east of Leicester and near the Rutland Reservoir. It used to be the location of the HMP Ashwell prison up until 2011 when there was a big old riot and it caused a lot of fires and they had to close the place down as a working prison. I've put the postcode to the site in the description down below, so if you're navigating by sat-nav you can use that, but as a word of warning, when I entered the postcode onto my sat-nav and I tried to get there on the game day, it did actually drop me off on the wrong side of the town of Ashwell. So as a word of warning, make sure it's actually pointed at the site before you set off. If the postcode isn't working, I tried searching for Oakham Enterprise Park and that dropped me straight off on the front doorstep. Once you arrive at the site, you're going to be greeted by a massive pair of steel gates. You've got the MCG banners on either side of them. What you want to do is drive straight on through these main gates, keep going past the car park. You'll have a building on the left hand side with a slight route around it. Drive through that, follow the road around, and you're going to find yourself in front of this large building here. Now you want to walk through the double doors, take a right, and just through there you've got the sign-in desk where you can set yourself up for the day, as well as the safe zone for the games. So prices for the game day are £35 if you're not a member of Matlock Combat Games and £30 if you are. If you want a hire gun for the day, £50 will get you your walk-on fee, a hire gun, a face mask and 3,000 rounds worth of ammo. Whilst there is no booking fee for the site, it is asked that you do book on before you turn up. You can either do this by email, phone or Facebook. I've put a link to their website down in the description below, so all those details are available on there. They also do Wednesday games for £15 whether you're a member or not, and you can also hire a handgun for a tenner if you need to. In terms of the facilities, you've got a full kitchenette in the actual safe zone itself which provides hot lunch, but they also do hot breakfast as well. It's not included with your walk-on fee, but if you fancy it in the morning it's available. They also have a modest shop on site as well, so if there's any tooling you need or spare ammo, grenades, even a couple of handguns knocking around, you can pick those up on the store. They do have fully working bathrooms in the safe zone. Now, a note about the bathrooms, however, only use the ones in the safe zone. Because it's an old prison building, they do have bathrooms out on the site, but they do not work. The plumbing has been taken out of them, so under no circumstances are you to use them. You will get chucked off site. You don't want to be known as the one guy who's thrown out for taking a tactical dump. Aside from that, the site has absolutely everything you could possibly need in the safe zone. Warm, you've got a roof over your heads, and you've got a nice area for setting up. So ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. So in terms of the staff on the day, they were very approachable, which is always nice to see when you've just turned up at the crack of dawn to be there, but they're also good to talk to and very well informed about what was going on with the games during the day. During the actual games, the marshals were always in sight. You could always see at least one keeping an eye on players, and they weren't afraid to pull people aside if they thought there was a bit of dodgy play going on. You also had some player marshals. Now these were people who played along with the teams, got stuck into the games, so what that allowed them to do was see things that the normal marshals couldn't. It also allowed them to get a good feel for how the games were flowing, so if it was going a bit stagnant they could then make a suggestion to the actual marshals and then they'd try and mix that up a bit. In terms of the players themselves, while it's a different player base to the one I'm used to at the Woodland site, I still managed to get talking to a couple of people regardless of what team we're on. There was a general light-hearted atmosphere to the place. There's a bit of banter going on through the morning safety brief, but it covered everything you needed to know and it kept the moods light-hearted. In terms of hit taking, the first half of the day, flawless, no problems with it whatsoever. However, during the second half there was a couple of instances of it, and whilst this is Airsoft, it does happen, I get that. There were some cases where it was a little bit blatant and that did get me a little bit wound up, but when you speak to the marshals about it, they did pull the people aside and had a word with them. So as far as I'm concerned, whilst hit taking does happen, it's Airsoft, at least they were actually on the ball and managed to curb it when it did. So easily the biggest selling point about this site is that it used to be a prison. When you're playing in the old prison wings, you're surrounded by high razor wire top fences, and you've got all the barred windows, the heavy steel doors. It just adds a real atmosphere that I've never really found anywhere else. It feels really oppressive playing in here because you can actually go into the cells and see how people obviously live their lives. In terms of the actual gameplay itself though, what I like about this CQB site is it gives you options. Now, some of the sites I've been to in the past, what would happen is they'd force you down a singular route, and the only way you can make any progress was to throw as many bodies into the meat grinder as you could. With the jail, it gives you options. You've got at least 3 different attack routes most of the time where you can flank around people and try different doorways. So say one doorway's getting a lot of heat onto it and it's really slowing the game down, just wander around the side of the building, try a different door. There are plenty of different ways you can get at objectives. So whilst all the indoors are playable, so is the outdoors as well, and because it's really clear, it allows you to sprint up and down the buildings as quick as you can. It is amazing how quick you can pull off a flank off on a unsuspecting team. This isn't an instant win solution, however, because a lot of the outdoor areas don't have much in the way of cover. So if you're running around, you can quite easily find yourself bogged down in a long-range firefight, so sometimes you do have to go through the indoors to circumvent that. So if hardcore CQB isn't your thing, this site does have something to offer. The outdoor gameplay was actually quite fun. You've got a lot of tarpaulined off steel barricades that you can hide behind. You've also got a load of disused cars that are playable as well, which is always interesting to see. But if indoor CQB is your thing, then this site does have a lot to offer. You can play down the long prison wings, and they've actually knocked through a couple of the walls, so in some long hallways you can actually zigzag between the rooms, so you only have to dive across to the parallel doors. So this means that it's a lot easier to take a long hallway. You don't have to go down the hallway itself, you can go through the rooms that way. Also, if you are turning up though, I highly recommend that you bring a torch. Some of the rooms are pitch black. If you don't have a torch, you're not going to see shit. So if you want to see some of the more interesting bits of the area, such as this little maze bit they've got in one area where it's all blacked out, you've got black tarpaulins, if you don't have a torch you're not seeing anything, and it's really interesting to play in, so I highly recommend you bring one with you. But also, if CQB isn't your thing, you've also got the option of the outdoors, and that's what I really like about this site. I cannot stress enough just how cool this place is to look at and play in. So what type of game modes were on offer when we turned up? Well, there was your standard attack and defend style game mode where one team would start in a prison wing, the other team would have to sweep the entire thing and clear them out, and when they got shot they would fall back to the next one, and so on until the entire site had been wiped. There was a particularly fun infection game mode at the end of the day, which is in one of the darker ones, but it had 4 staircases in it, so you could quite literally be attacked from all angles. That made it really intense. There was also a particularly fun one where the only objective we originally knew of was we had to find a locked box, and it had a combination lock on it that we had to crack the code, open the box, and that would tell us our next objective, and that led us on almost like a treasure hunt of the entire site, which was really enjoyable. There was one game that I didn't really enjoy that much, and that's the game mode itself. It wasn't anything particularly special, but what they did is they limited the amount of options that you could actually use to attack this area. And the game mode really suffered for that. It just ended up in one large bottleneck where you couldn't really go anywhere, and people just kept lobbing grenades around the corner to kill off entire sections of the team in one go. The strength of this site is the amount of options it gives you. When you limit those options off, the games really suffer for it. By all means, focus the fighting in one area, but leave those options for the players. It just makes the whole thing a lot more fluid and enjoyable for everyone. Another thing to note, which I did touch on a little bit just recently, is the amount of impact grenades that were used on site. Whilst this is something that people have bought, and so I'm not suggesting that you don't allow them to use it, what I would like is if you only allow them to take a set number of refills per game, because the amount of times I've come back from respawn and I was instantly killed by an impact grenade around the corner for the 3rd time in a row, it did start to get a little bit irritating. Like, a grenade shouldn't be your primary weapon. It should be an occasional curveball, not something that you rely on all the time. And it's a little bit infuriating because there's nothing you can do about that. You can just be wandered up to a corner, bang, dead, respawn. So maybe limit the amount of charges that a player can take for these grenades, and then they can still use the grenade, but it means that they won't be constantly spamming the thing. That aside though, I did have a lot of fun on the game day today. These are just little points that I'm nitpicking about to try to find a flaw in it, but it was a really enjoyable day. What I did like is the fact you could use the outdoors as well, regardless of the game modes, and it meant there was a lot of fast-paced action going on. Like, only one of the game was one hit dead, and that was the one just before lunch, and you needed to go back to the safe zone for that anyway. The rest were all instant medic. So you get hit, you go back to regen, you jump straight back in. There is minimal downtime on this, and that keeps the games constantly ramping up. You're actually always in the action. There's very little downtime on it, and I love that. It meant that you could just dive straight back in if you get shot, and this is obviously going to reduce the amount of non-hit taking because players don't have as much of a penalty for getting shot. So all round, absolutely love the game modes on offer on the day. So usually this is the part in the video where I ask, is it worth a visit? But to be honest, that doesn't even sound like a question in my head. This is something you absolutely need to see. Just playing in a prison is immensely cool. Looking at all the razor wire fences, the big cell doors, it's just something you've never seen before, and I really enjoyed my time there. The games were good, the staff was bang on. Ultimately, I had a great time when I was playing at the jail. Obviously, there was a little thing when I said about limiting your options when you don't get free reign in the sights, and also the amount of impact grenades, but that's just me taking a little bit of a nitpick in what was otherwise a really enjoyable day. So I've put links to their Facebook page and their website in the description down below if you want to find out more about the site. And if you've got any feedback you'd like to give, comments, maybe you'd like to share your own experiences of what this site was like, leave it in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.